Everybody loves healers, but nobody wants to play the healer. But why? Well, this is because healers are meant to be passive. Their entire role is focused on supportive teammate maintenance, being teammate reliant for survival, and also having in-depth game knowledge. Due to these reasons, they tend to be more focused on what their team is doing, which is fair because healing is something that you should not underestimate. Breaking these norms would be weird because it is tried and safe to execute. But this only makes the healer's playstyle one-dimensional. If only the healers are not focused on these three pillars of its archetype. But what if we add another pillar? The enemy influence. Most class-based FPS with only one healer, main goal is to only heal, and they barely interact with the enemy in a unique way. Beside for self-defense or positioning away from the enemy. But even if they do, it is likely a copy of an already existing mechanic. This is because they are more focused on maintaining the team. But it sure would be more interesting if you can do more than that. Now what if you can? Meet the medic. The Flappy Men is a class-based environmental first-person shooter. Most maps are wide, and if not, it is now. Since the maps are wide, most of the classes follows an archetype of moving around the environment, taking advantage of those environment, and environment denial. Now looking at this class, so simple, so adorable, and so polite. So tell me, what do you guys think this guy is equipped with? Nice guess, but it's chemical warfare, cryogenesis, pyromania, the dark side of the moon. But why is he equipped with such dangerous items? This is because most classes in the Flappy Men are incredibly aggressive. In these dire circumstances, the medic needs to adapt. The medic is equipped with two healing items. The medkit applies a burst healing to a teammate. However, it recharges really slow. Meanwhile, the steam pistol provides less healing, but it reloads much faster and it can overheal. It still reloads though. If the medic was given those two items from the start, he'd just be a waiting slop. Thankfully, both items reloads passively, and he is armed with two weapons. The gas cannon launches a projectile that leaves a toxic lingering effect, damaging and preventing enemies from healing themselves. Meanwhile, the tranquilizer fires rapidly and is able to put the enemy to sleep once an amount is hit, but it's mostly best in mid-range. Also, Both weapons reload slowly and not passively. Therefore, the medic has to reload, preventing him from healing or damaging, which is fair. With those two opposing kits combined, you have a class that has to juggle his offensive and supportive capabilities, allowing many decisions to be made. For example, using healing equipments to prepare the team to battle, or weakening enemies by spreading toxicity around the map, or he can heal the injured while also damaging the injurer, or use the tranquilizer for self-defense, or offensively. Pair that gameplay with his insane unlockables, you have a class that is quite dynamic and always changing. But why is the medic not overpowered if he can heal or damage people? First off, the enemy does damage better and might even outdo his damage or healing. Secondly, every class can heal themselves. Thirdly, the game has a stamina system which works similar to a health system. But instead of being eliminated, you just get knocked out, which stuns you temporarily. Your medkit cannot help that. Despite all that, the medic is still viable and helpful for the team, but a war criminal at the opposite team. In most games, due to healing being influential, the healers are the weakest in terms of survival. This encourages them to stay with their team. But sometimes you cannot even really rely on your teammates, or the enemy is just really good, and teammate communication is really hard to find. This is why some players would rather play characters that can react to the enemy, like the agent, for example. Typical Colors 2, inspired by Team Fortress 2, is a class-based movement FPS. Most classes plays around movement or positioning or even both, and maps are generally tight, so you better rely on those tactics because most fight ends in 1 to 3 shots. Now focusing on the agent, she has a lot of tricks up her sleeves. A gun for self-defense, the disguise kit and the invisibility watch to sneak around the map, the Cipher to disrupt buildings, and her best weapon of them all, the Bally Song, being able to eliminate key targets upon backstab. This is her main source of damage. All being said, all of her unlockables follows the same rule, except for one, which is the one I was supposed to discuss. The rate removes the agent's ability to backstab and instead gives her the ability to cast spells that support the team. This turns her into a subclass, just like how TF2 turned Demoman from a sentry-busting class into a sentry-busted class. TC2 turned Agent from a pick support into a pick support. The haste spell speeds up nearby players, which might be useful in coordinated shenanigans. Meanwhile, the respite spell heals a teammate, which is the most used spell. But she requires magic to use them, which can be acquired by eliminating enemies. However, how can she even do that if she cannot backstab enemies? She doesn't need to. Cause remember, Agent has a gun. While yes, a gun might look less dangerous than a knife, but a gun is more consistent. Knives are not. However, TC2 already has a dedicated healer, the Doctor, which pumps more healing and has the Uber which can make teammates invincible, unlike the Wraith which only heals a burst of 75, while also being quite limited. However, it is common knowledge for doctors to never overextend. However, Agent's entire identity is about overextending. She can disguise herself and cloak into the flank and then the enemy territory without the support of her team. This allows her to heal far up teammates, making them no longer wait for a medkit nor even retreat to the team territory. Situational? Absolutely. But do not underestimate her healing. For surviving one extra shot could make a difference. Now, what I said is more of a playstyle, but the fact that she can even do that makes her more useful than the Doctor in certain situations. But in all honesty, she could even stay in the areas the Doctor is usually in, while still being effective but not as supportive as the Doctor. She could even act as a good Doctor guard. And that's all fine and dandy. In most games, enemy knowledge is learned late due to the fact that they are busy learning how their class works. Healers, on the other hand, has to do both because they are the main target. And mistakes are fairly common, giving more room for improvement. To increase the chances of their survival, healers are likely to position themselves away from the enemy. Because in what situation does the healer need to face the enemy? Oh. Moving from an entire class and a different playstyle, we have a character in a Congo line of support in a game called Phighting. It is a 5v5 hero shooter. The gameplay is fast-paced and has fairly small maps, which immediately sends you to battle as you spawn. Its UI has every fighters currently in the match be shown on top of the screen. That's not there for show. That is there to help you synergize with your team or to telegraph threats. No other fighters need this more than Vinestaff. Unlike other supports, Vinestaff lacks influential movement abilities beside her passive. Therefore, she needs to keep moving. But do not be fooled. She has 1,000 petals that can be fired rapidly. Now, taking down enemies or hitting them 12 times allows her to bring life to sprouts. This allows her to place sprouts around the map. This heals her teammates once it's placed and can further do more healing until it passes up old age as long as Vinestaff keeps dealing damage. However, her teammates needs to get close to the sprouts and it can be destroyed. Therefore, she needs to position it close to the main action while decreasing the chances of it getting destroyed by the enemy. Anyway, her entire kit hammers down her role to deal lots of damage. Her E ability fires down a root from an oak, dealing damage and rooting down enemies, messing with their momentum. Also, if it hit a sprout, it can deal damage to enemies or heal allies. Meanwhile, her Q ability brands the enemy, allowing the team to leech the health of the enemy for themselves. Now for her F, also known as she'll bring a lotus from her den into a specific part of the map, which consecutively heals her team in bursts and in a wider area than her sprouts. She can also gain more sprout from this. Now, despite me hyping up her offensive capabilities, her damage output is still terrible. But damage is not her role. Damage is just her way of healing the team. Therefore, Vinestaff needs to be active, precise, and learn how to position herself near her teammates while the enemy is in her eyes. Or she could just juke the enemy. It's really effective. I just don't know how to do that. Now, looking at these three examples, you probably think all healers should be offensive. Well, actually, no. I just like characters that requires multitasking. In fact, healers in other games are not bad, and even makes total sense due to gameplay reason or realism. What I am trying to say is to experiment. Make more healers that are fun to play than just press thingy to healy majiggy. Anyway, that is all. That's all. Thank you. Bye.